million check for this season's CGT winner.
Yes! It's the $1 million season.
Thank you, Rogers.
Canada's Got Talent. This March on City TV.
You're watching Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello, and welcome to Her Story, the show to encourage more women to explore the possibility of using their skills and talents by participating in leadership roles within our community. I'm Tiffany James, and I have the pleasure of hosting Her Story. I hope this program will encourage women in our community to actively engage and use their voice to bring attention to issues they are passionate about and entice us all to get more involved. Please welcome my guest, Francesca Dobbyn, Executive Director for the United Way of Bruce Grey. Her credits include founding the Grey Bruce Children's Alliance and the Bruce Grey Poverty Task Force. She previously served as Municipal Tourism Director and the Festival Coordinator for the Wyerton Willie Festival and has been a powerful voice within the community for over 30 years. Hi, Francesca. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm excited to talk to you because, as you know, you've done so much for the underprivileged in our community, and I love how you triumph for them. So I thought, what a better person than to ask more people to get involved within the community. So can you tell me a bit more about your background and why you wanted to get involved like you have?
So one of the key things about me, I wasn't born here. I was born in England, emigrated when I was 7. And as a girl, that was really one of the first times I realized that I could be treated differently. My brother got to go to the cockpit. Of course, this was 1974 when you could go visit the cockpit and the pilots. But the flight attendant said, why? Why would a girl want to go to the cockpit? And I'm like, why wouldn't she? So 7. So when people ask me all the time, oh, how long have you been a feminist? Oh, 50 plus years, because I'm just about to turn 57, because I was 7 the first time I was told, because I was a girl, I couldn't do something. So we came to Canada. My dad was an engineer. We landed in Bruce County in Kincardine with the Bruce Power, Bruce Nuclear at the time, and have been in the community ever since. And when I was in high school, I think one of the key things that came across my world was a quote that one of my teachers gave me. And it was, I stood around wondering why somebody didn't do something. And then I realized I was a somebody. And I was like, okay. And I always had, my parents were very staunch feminists, both my dad and my mom around this, very keen on social justice issues. My mom was a lifelong volunteer and remains so. And I just grew up in this household where you fixed things. And so, and sometimes blinded by my own ego, I just, let's go fix this. And fortunately, people go, okay, let's do it together. And the rest, as they say, is history. Or herstory.
Oh, I like that. Have you ever had a situation where you wanted to fix something and you just couldn't, and it was so discouraging? And how did you find your way around that to make it so that you felt like you actually were able to help?
So one of the things we worked really hard on as a United Way, and I got involved, a lot on my personal time, was a winter disconnection ban for electricity and natural gas. And from when I first started making noise about this to when we actually got the legislation passed was 10 years. And, there were definitely ebbs and flows of dropping the issue and just moving on to other things, but never setting it aside and waiting for the moment, the right conversations, gathering the right information, reading the right piece of news story, which is where it started, as well as getting the advocates and others on side with you to talk about the issue and being rooted in fact, not being rooted in emotion, around this issue. So, people would say, oh, low-income people just need to turn the light out when they leave the room. And we would go and we would look at people's bills and say, this is their consumption compared to somebody else. Their consumption's way lower. That actually is a stereotype and not factual. So you have to set that aside. And now let's move the conversation forward using data and factual information, not stereotypes. And then the other thing when that happens, though, is when you have to be prepared when somebody finally opens that door that you've been pushing against and you kind of fall into the room. And then everybody's looking at you going, okay, so what should we do? And you're like, whoa, wait a second. I've been banging on this door for 10 years. And now you're on the other side going, okay, wait, what? Y'all think I'm the expert? So it's really interesting. And that's definitely with a lot of the training I've done and conversations around that particular issue is get ready when the door opens. Be ready for the next step as well.
That's excellent advice. For those that don't know, can you explain what that initiative was that you worked so hard?
So prior to 2016, utility companies, electricity and natural gas companies could turn off their services in winter. So if you hadn't paid your natural gas bill and it was February, they actually legally could turn the natural gas off, which would mean your house was cold, your pipes could freeze. If you were rural and you had a well pump and your electricity was cut off, you lost access to water, which is a health and safety issue. And those were things we had to bring to the attention of people in Toronto who make those decisions, that especially in a rural context, it's not just water, it's a life-sustaining piece as well. So we went and got this ban put in place so that kicks on November 15th every year. People do need to be reconnected. They can be disconnected May 1st as well. And during the pandemic in 2020, when people lost all their jobs, we had CERB, we went and said, we're having trouble processing applications for assistance for utilities. You got to stop the disconnections. And they went into July, I think it was the end of July, before they, I think, settled down enough and we were out of lockdown that disconnections could happen again.
That's amazing. Can you tell me what was the pivotal moment, besides being 7 and not allowed into the cockpit of the airplane, that inspired you actually to become more engaged in social and community issues?
I don't know if there's a burning bush moment in my life. It's frog in boiling water of, again, and going back to that somebody and just being egotistically blind to barriers of, you can't do that. There's nothing you can do about that. Well, why can't we? There was a project I did at the Banff Leadership Center in 2017. I got to go for a month to the Leadership Center in Banff around systems change. And that was very pivotal of being in a room with other, we call ourselves disruptive leaders, and looking at things that from a different way. So I guess actually there was a moment around disruptive leadership. And I was driving to Timmins. My daughter lives in Timmins, and I was listening to NPR podcasts, Go Public Radio, and it was about disruptive leadership. And it was the first time I'd heard that phrase. And it was about, Indian engineers going into Africa to teach the women how to install the solar panels to give electricity to the villages. And they used the women because the women used it for community, whereas if they had given the resources to the men would have put price tags on it all. So they empowered the women of the villages, and these were the grandmothers, and they taught them all how to be solar power engineers. And it disrupted that system on so many levels. And I just was driving thinking, I found my people. I know who I am now. I'm a disruptive leader. And I went in my LinkedIn profile and went disruptive leader. Because sometimes, I just got to get in and make a mess and be there to help clean it up. But at the same time, let's stop, doing things the same way. We did that with the pandemic.
Yeah, it forces people to start to talk, though, when you do that, though. It forces people to look at things differently. I love that term. I love it. Disruptive leader. That's fabulous. Is that what made you want to engage in, so in 2016 and 2018, you got more involved in the municipal and the provincial level. Is that one of the reasons why you wanted to do that, or?
Yeah, I wanted to do more, and I thought that was a way I could possibly do more. I wasn't successful in either attempt, but learned a lot about myself through both efforts, and as well learned a lot about the system. And after 2018, I realized I could do more on the outside than I could on the inside. I learned how rigid our political structures are, especially when you got into partisanship. So even if you had the right idea and the right program and the right resources, if it didn't fit that political box, it would go nowhere. And that was really shocking to realize the rigidity of that system. And I've had a lot of people that have come up to me and said over the years, I'm really sorry you didn't get in, but I'm also really glad you didn't get in.
Well, that makes sense. What you've done within the community itself is just fantastic. And I personally love sitting in a room with you and talking because it's just so, I always walk away with an aha moment. I have to tell you that. I love it. Um, so what were the main influences in your life? You mentioned your parents being stout feminists, and I think that's amazing. Props, go dad. What other things who else were main influences in your life?
So there were definitely leaders in Canada that I looked up to. Sheila Copps comes to mind because I was a teenager in the 80s, and my dad was an avid news watcher, and he didn't really like her as the person, but he liked how she approached things, how she stood up to misogyny in the House of Parliament. Crosby Source was one of the things. She wrote the book Nobody's Baby. And he would point her out to me and say, look what she can do, look what she's standing up to. And as well, Bruce Power wasn't Bruce Power at the time, it was Bruce Nuclear. But they had such a strong emphasis around women in nuclear, even then. It's very strong now, but even in the 80s. So when I was a Girl Guide, we would do first aid, and we would get trainers from the nuclear industry that would come and help us out and they were just so strong, supportive of women getting involved in things, and being knowledgeable and doing non-traditional things. And it just created that culture and environment that, don't let anybody hold you back. You can do this. So there's a lot of people that have come and gone into my life, at those right moments, at the right time of, connecting and saying, let me get you through to the next thing. Let me help you work this out.
That's awesome. Starting in November, this will be the start of your 20th year as the executive director for the United Way. Congratulations.
It's odd.
Did you ever think you would be this long with?
No, honestly, every job I had ever had before was about 5 years, and either I chose to transition to something else or they chose for me to transition to something else. That happens. And so I just thought life was kind of a 5 year cycle. And when I hit year 6 and 7 here, I was like, oh, I could stay here. And then after doing the provincial run in 18, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to finish it out. I got, 7, 8 years before I have to retire, or I could retire. I'm going to stick it out. Sydney Meisner, who was the executive director of Grey County CAS for 30 years, went to her retirement party, and I was like, I can be at one organization. You don't always have to be moving to the next thing. And so, yeah, I was like, I can do this. I can stay here and continue as long as everybody will have me to do what I do.
What do you love the most about the position with the United Way and what the United Way does for the community?
My favorite piece is just putting it out to the community and saying, this is what's going on. This is what we need help with. And the community goes, okay, we got it. Is community engagement. I spent some time this week with folks from Bruce County brainstorming around homelessness issues, and just, out of the box, working with the Safe Communities Committee up the Bruce Peninsula around stunt driving, which is very different than, the normal day-to-day work of the United Way. But by engaging the community, we create a change, and it's that kind of piece of when you get that opportunity on a Friday to look back on the week and go, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what could have been better, and what did we win? Where are the wins today? And what a joy it is. And I really enjoy people.
That's excellent. That's awesome. So what have you learned about yourself on your journey so far?
Patience.
Mm.
Patience. And the small wins, and to really pay attention to the small wins, because everything is a step in the right direction. And, on that disconnection ban, it was meeting the right people, talking to the vice presidents of various corporations and companies, getting the data together and really chunking out an issue rather than just looking at the whole thing as a big piece of what small steps can we take.
That's cool. So I guess I want to say you did touch a little bit on you working with Bruce County with the homeless, and we have noticed there's an increase of homelessness in the area. Is there anything you would like to let us as a community know about the homelessness issue? What's working, what's not working? How we as a community can help engage and support those vulnerable within the community? Is there something you want to touch base on that a little bit?
The big thing we want people to understand is this is an income issue. It goes the same for food insecurity. So people who don't have enough food to eat, it's all an income issue. It's not a budgeting issue. It is not a lifestyle choices issue. This is strictly an income issue. So we need to talk about how much people on ODSP are getting, Ontario Disability Program, how much, other people on other disability payments are getting, WSIB, all of those things. Ontario Works is ridiculously low in terms of giving people enough money. When a room at rental is $1,500, how do you even manage? And when we look at and understand, the investment strategy behind housing now, because interest rates were so low, it was the only thing that was increasing in value was housing. So all the investment companies got behind buying up the housing, the pandemic, out-migration from urban, all of those things impacting the cost of housing, and income has not risen with it. So when we look at people with mental health challenges, with general health challenges, we have seniors that are living in tents because they can't afford housing. It's an income issue. People will say, oh, they just need to learn to budget better. How do you budget on $1,600 a month, which is what a senior has? How do you budget on $1,200, which is what somebody on disability gets? That's what we need to understand, the real core issue behind it, because that's what we need to address before we can start looking. Because studies have been done that people who become unhoused without a mental health issue within 3 months have one, be it depression, be it anxiety. You don't sleep. You're always trying to sleep with one eye open. And we know sleep is that good, deep sleep is so important to refreshing your brain and keeping going and doing everything on a day-to-day basis. So if you're sleeping with one eye open because raccoons or, humans, whoever is outside your tent, if you're lucky enough to have a tent, you're not sleeping. And so it's just, how do you dig yourself out of that situation? And, I've read recently a pile of stories of people who had businesses in the pandemic and because of the pandemic lost them and ended up living in cars. And that's who's homeless, as well as those with health challenges.
Yeah. For those of us that want to become more engaged and want to help, where would we start? What would your
So some of the easy things to do is to sign up to get information from the Poverty Task Force. We funnel all of our programs and information through Jill Umbuck and that team. She's a United Way employee, and they can stay on top of, because we gather information based on various themes. We have monthly meetings, so the public's welcome to attend. Be educated. Understand what the city is doing, understand what the counties are doing. When there is a call out for engagement, go and learn about something. Meetings around Bayview or whatever Bayview is going to be called. Go and understand what it is. I was in a meeting and somebody referred to it as a halfway house. And I was like, whoa, but that was it. Straw camel. I interrupted and said, excuse me. It is a healthcare facility. It has nothing to do with the corrections system in any way, shape, or form. Do not call it that. And, the person apologized. They were trying to be a little dramatic. And it's like, no, learn what it is. Be factual about it. You can still not want it in your backyard, but be factual about it.
That's good advice. Where can one go to learn more about it, though? Like, where can where? Because I know a lot of us, which is unfortunate to say, some of us do get our news feed from social media, and we now can't do that. Where would you suggest we can go to learn more about what's happening?
So if you want to know more about the Bayview, you can visit the hospital's website. There are information, there are public meetings coming up. Join your local chamber because they keep you up to date on everything. Can't go without saying that. Absolutely. Give us a shout, ask us, people call and just ask us questions. Absolutely. Reach out to Jill. There's definitely flyers around what it is and how it's working. Don't rely on, especially now we can't add links to news articles. So go check local news websites every day, see what everybody's talking about, what the news of the day is be more proactive in learning and ask questions. Because what you end up with is, well, I heard this. And it's like, no, that's not quite true. Or really, let me check into that. And I will often reach back out to the hospital and go, okay, somebody just told me this. And it's like, it's not, I don't want to say it's a half truth in that it's kind of fake news and all that dramatic, but it's just a misunderstanding. And you get clarification on, okay, this is what this is.
Yeah, I think sometimes there can be a lot of misunderstanding. So you're right. To do your own research is really important, especially with issues that you're passionate about. You touched base a little bit on the Bruce Gray Poverty Task Force. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what services that they offer for those of us that don't know?
So this is a planning table. So there's no frontline services through this table. So what the task force is well over 50 organizations that have an interest in or a connection to people living low income or living with barriers to accessing services. So it's an information gathering. It's a planning table. We'll take an issue at a higher level rather than, so if we talk about food insecurity, we don't just say, okay, the food bank is out of Kraft dinner, so we need more Kraft dinner. We may say that, but we will also say food insecurity is an income issue. We need fresh produce as well as Kraft dinner, because Kraft dinner once a week, why not? Kraft dinner every night, that's not good. That's not nutrition. So, what are the other issues that go along with it? And making those connections. So when we, see an issue bubbling up and we're like, okay, we're missing a partner here. There's an organization that knows more about this than anybody around the table. Let's bring them in. Let's get them connected. And then we can also share information as well, because some organizations just don't have, they don't have fundraising capacity. They don't have community education capacity. We've seen a huge increase in domestic violence with the pandemic and all the pressures there. But the women's shelters are just so busy coping with it. They're not able to come out and say that and do a public education campaign around, this is a serious issue that we need to talk about and address as a community. So that's where the Poverty Task Force can say, okay, this is what's going on, and this impacts homelessness as well, because the victim partner has to leave. And the perpetrator may be in jail. So there may be an income impact as well. And then if there's nowhere safe for that person to go and set up new housing, often they have to return because, well, I'm 6 weeks or in the shelter or up. There's nowhere else for me to go without leaving the community. So I may as well go back because at least I had money and I could feed my kids.
For those that want to help, but the only way they know how is to donate, which is fabulous, where would you, or what organizations would you say benefit the most from the donations that help that wide range of people in need?
Everybody. So there's a lot of niche. So you've got the shelters that do domestic violence and violence against women always need donations. The best thing to do with any donation is an unrestricted donation. So we at the United Way, we have backpacks, we have utilities, we have the SOS Project. And what we would do with an unrestricted fund is back those up. So if you donate to utilities, it only stays in the utility pot. If you only donate to backpacks, it helps pay for all that backpack stuff, which is great. We need that. But an unrestricted funds allow us to move it from program to program. So, every once in a while, a corporation will come along and go, hey, great job. Here's $10,000. And I was like, all right, that's good. And that program's covered now for a couple of months. And we can shift funds between. So for every charity and unrestricted fund, our food banks can go shopping when they have cash, stuff the ambulance, stuff the cruiser. All of those things are great because it helps have a conversation in the community, and it does fill the shelves. But at the same time, when you give cash to a charity, it enables them to go and bulk purchase. So, we can bulk purchase socks, at 75 cents a sock versus going in and buying them at the store level at $7 a sock or $3 a sock. So for charities, that unrestricted fund is so important. It also helps pay for staff. People always talk about, I wanted to go to frontline help. Well, staff are the frontline help. When you have a utility program manager, such as we do, they come in with one concern and go out with 5 applications to all the other programs. They may go out with a good food box token, so they have fresh food, because we can look at the big picture of what's going on in somebody's life and say, hey, let's get you connected to all the other supports out there. So making a donation is the most important thing, and an unrestricted donation to your favorite charity is the most impactful way in the community.
I think that's great. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So I think thank you for sharing that. I wanted to touch a little bit on 211 because not a lot of people know about 211. So can you please, like you mentioned, the support services all in one place. So can you please tell us a little bit about 211?
So we've had 211 for 12, maybe 13 years. I'd have to double check. In our community, 211 is a phone number. At its most simple, it's a phone number. There are staff 24 hours a day that answer the phone. You go into a bit of a triage, English, French. It is also our homelessness intake. So for Grey Bruce, if you're calling from Grey Bruce, it'll ask if you're calling about emergency housing because you need a motel room because you're homeless. So, you got to get through the little tree, and then you can talk to somebody. And it's a database of all human services information for Bruce and Grey and Ontario and Canada now, thanks to, the pandemic and federal funding helped us roll it out to the other provinces that we weren't there. It is the United Way of Canada project, so it is one of our pieces, but it's for everybody and anybody. It carries a list of all the free meal programs, be it frozen or hot meals. So that Thursday lunch in Chesley that happens every week as a hot lunch versus the St. Aidan's frozen meal program. It can get you connected to all those resources. If there isn't a local service, for example, so we don't have a John Howard or Elizabeth Fry Society to help people coming out of incarceration navigate the system, but there's one in Barrie and there's one in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they're more than happy to talk to people. So you can call. You can also call and say, hey, I have a grandparent or a child in Kingston and I need help with whatever. I want to get them some PSW help, or I want them to connect to a social event, coffee with like friends. Is there anything in Kingston? And you can call from Grey Bruce and they will give you Kingston information or wherever.
Wow, what a great service that I don't think enough people know about. So Francesca, you've given so much for us to learn and explore and do our own research today. I can't thank you enough. What advice would you give someone who's trying to find their voice?
Just use it. It's like exercise. You know what? The more you use it, the stronger you get. And don't let somebody shush you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today on Her Story. I'd like to end the program by encouraging you to get involved in your community and find the spark that ignites you on your path to create your own story. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Thanks, Francesca.
Thank you.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.